Here's a fact that you will be aware of and that I'd forgotten about, that actually during Desert Storm, there were over 500,000 American troops in Saudi. The numbers are absolutely staggering. But it has been a fraught relationship. 9/11 was a testing moment for the relationship between Saudi Arabia and indeed the United States. I have a question for you, and it's actually from your notes. Paul, do you think that actually US politicians will actually flex their muscles and balk against an increased and tighter relationship between Saudi and the United States? You raised the prospect that Congress may have a say in this.
Well, that's right. It's one thing to announce big deals. It's one thing to announce that Saudi Arabia will be permitted to buy the F-35, this advanced stealth fighter. But it's another thing to actually have planes touching down and taking off from Saudi runways. And between here and there, there's a lot of details. And when you start to get into the details about who's going to transfer what technology at what point, that's where Congress, which is, I think, fair to say, a little bit more friendly toward Israel than toward Saudi Arabia, is going to have some input. Now, that's not to say that this deal is not going to go through, because, of course, Israel also has suffered some reverses in its public standing. But there is going to be, I think, probably a decently long road between where we are and where we get to. That, of course, has been the way that most major U.S. arms deals with Saudi Arabia have gone, going all the way back to the early 1980s and advanced AWACS planes, which are used to find airplanes. Israel has always wanted to maintain what it calls the qualitative military advantage to preserve its standing in the region. Selling F-35s, which Israel also operates, to Saudi Arabia could be seen as challenging that, and opposition figures in Israel have criticized Prime Minister Netanyahu for letting the United States make the sale. So I think that there's going to be some difficulties, but also, President Trump really seems committed to bringing back in the Crown Prince and to making sure that the U.S.-Saudi relationship stays strong.
You raised so many important issues. Can I just focus on one of the issues you raised? And that is, you talked about the Saudi-US relationship and the Israel-US relationship. But what about the closing of the triangle? What about the Saudi-Israeli relationship? I've heard for years rumours, reports, anecdotes from the region that actually they're a lot closer than many people think on the public surface as well. How close are Israel and Saudi now?
It's always hard to tell, because a lot of what happens in the region, especially if it concerns Israel, is hidden, done quietly. But as you suggest, persistent rumors, anecdotes, stories, news articles suggesting that governments like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates certainly engage in security cooperation with Israel. I think that something that has happened over the past several months is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has found the limits to his ability to test the Americans, especially with the bombing of the Hamas leadership here in Qatar just a month and a half ago, which did signal that there were limits to what the United States would support and clear limits on what the United States would accept from Israel. And I think that what we've had happen since then is that the Arab Gulf states have managed to upgrade their security relationships with the United States. Qatar, of course, got a promise of mutual defense. And now this designation of Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, partly symbolic, but partly real. I think that this is all in the context of, as Dan mentioned, trying to secure the Abraham Accords with Israel and Saudi Arabia, which would be a diplomatic breakthrough, a triumph for President Trump, if he can make it happen.
Paul, let me wade into the conversation by just steering us to the economic future and the role of petrodollars here for the Saudis, because there was a pledge overnight to commit $1 trillion to the US. That is the size of the Saudi Arabian entire sovereign wealth fund. So we're talking big numbers here. The reality is those petrodollars have not been free flowing in recent years, steering the kingdom away from very big ambitions, its Vision 2030 program, delaying some of these huge projects and just putting some question marks over whether it can fund its ambitions. But that said, the Saudis want to be number 3 in the world when it comes to AI, and some believe that is possible thanks to using cheap energy. How do you see the security of the kingdom from here, and whether it can deliver on this $1 trillion that is pledged?
Well, these are big numbers, and of course, one of the things that isn't in that pledge is a timeline, and $1 trillion over 10 years is different than one over 3 or 4 years. But look at who was in the room for the dinner. You had Jensen Huang, you had the CEO of of AMD. Michael Dell was there. And of course, these were also folks who came with President Trump to Riyadh and to Doha and to Abu Dhabi during their trip earlier this year. The Gulf states are serious about this. The Gulf states are serious about moving their economy away from oil. And, MBS, since he came to power, has been very serious about making the Saudi economy and society more open, more able to work with the rest of the world. AI is seen as being part of that. Are they going to be able to pull that off? There's a possibility, but on the other hand, diversification has been central to the Gulf economic strategy since the 1970s, and hydrocarbons continue to fuel their economy. But it certainly is possible that a combination of investment and political will could do something in terms of locating data centers. That would also provide a continuing reason for the U.S. to be involved in this region, where, of course, the United States has sometimes hinted that it might prefer not to play such a central role in the security of the Middle East region.